We do want to thank our sponsors, the good people at Kidder Matthews, to do real estate solutions for many of the types of companies that we want to support. Are here with us tonight. They've brought some really good food, and so make sure to reach out to them. We'll make sure that their contact information is available to everybody. This is the Free Market Medical Association, or this is the Arizona chapter of the Free Market Medical Association. And most of you know what that is, but some of you don't. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview, and we'll watch Keith's face to see how much he cringes when I talk about what it is we're doing, see if I say it right. But the Free Market Medical Association is an organization that's dedicated to transparency and value in medicine. And it is about getting the buyers of medicine and the sellers of medicine together so they can interact directly and not waste all of the money with middlemen in insurance groups and other coordinators of care. So what this gives us the ability to do, as those of us who sell healthcare, it gives us the ability to sell our services based on value. Instead of only getting paid based on being on a list from an insurance company, we can maximize the type of value we can provide, and we can sell that directly to the people who are buying healthcare. And that gives us the opportunity to bring up the quality of healthcare and bring down the cost at the same time. So that's why I'm here tonight, is because I want to see healthcare become more valuable to the people that we are serving. And for those of you who are physicians, we've got quite a few of you tonight that provide healthcare directly to individuals. And this is the opportunity that we have. There is over $1 trillion of waste in the healthcare system in America. And much of that waste goes to things that are associated with core values, like unnecessary procedures or botched procedures or unnecessary price hikes. And so of that $1 trillion, there are billions of that are being transacted here in Arizona. And all of that money is basically on the table. It's available to be redistributed to the people who want to provide healthcare with transparency and quality. And so that's what we want to do. We want to take those dollars that are being wasted, and we want to redistribute them. We want to not redistribute, but reallocate reallocate those dollars to the people who are going to provide quality. And so here with us we have Dr. Keith Smith. And when I was 8 years old, Keith Smith started practicing anesthesiology, which is not a comment about your age, Keith. I just thought it was interesting. And when I was 15, he co-founded the Surgery Centers of Oklahoma. And 12 years later, the Surgery Centers of Oklahoma did something crazy and unprecedented, which was to publish their prices, which sounds so obvious to anybody here who doesn't already practice medicine, because publishing prices sounds like such an easy and simple and normal thing to do, but it was revolutionary. And today he is extolled by thought leaders like Marty McCary and Dave Chase as a thought leader, as a beacon of where healthcare can go to fix the problems that we have. So Keith, we are excited to have you with us tonight, and we're going to open up most of the time for you. As we've talked about in the past, it sounds like you would like to be able to take questions as we go. Is that how you'd like to do it again?
Absolutely.
So we'll turn the time over to you, and we'll be here to ask questions. And you can leave comments in the chat box, and we'll direct them to Dr. Smith. Thanks, Keith.
Thank you. Thanks, Kendrick and Tim and everybody for.
Oh, we're quiet.
Can't hear. Let's see. You can't hear me? No.
Okay, so everybody else can hear him. We're gonna do this for now. You know what? Okay. On my phone also. It wasn't coming out of here. Everybody else uses your keys except for us. Okay.
Okay, how's that? Can you hear me now? Nope.
Well, it was working just a moment. Go to Chevron up and it will allow you to. Okay. There you go. Now go up to stuff. The speakers right there, select the speakers
Yes,
line
okay.
up. Forward, click on that. Boom. This. Mr. Smith?
Can you hear me now?
Go ahead and select. Is that one connected to Harman Kardon?
Yeah, and this is it is the Onyx one.
Audio settings right there. That's the speaker. Volume.
We had tried it.
So the speaker's definitely not. Okay. Go ahead and this one. Just because. We can also do this right here. Stand by. There's 0 audio. All right, so let's do this. This is on. Connected. All right, Dr. Smith, are you there?
Somebody give us a hello.
Unmute. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay. You guys can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I can't see any of you, but I'm assuming you can see and hear me. There we go. Okay, I can see you all now. Everybody nod their head that you can hear. Okay, very good. Well, thanks for having me. Sorry about technical issues. Jay Kempton had the idea to form the Free Market Medical Association not long after he and I met and started working together for a couple of reasons. One, just give you a little background on the organization. One of the reasons was he was receiving calls from angry competitors of mine. He was redirecting business to me because I would give him pricing, and these other people were losing surgeries, losing cases to us. And so he told them, well, then you need to post your prices. I mean, send me a price list of what you're doing. Most of these competitors, angry competitors, did not know how to do that. And in the meantime, he was receiving calls from bewildered competitors of his asking him, how in the world can you work with a facility like this? How do you actually work with a program like this? As we got to know what we were doing, while neither one of us wanted to lose money or go broke pursuing our passion, it was just that. It was a passion. We were not really revenue centric in our pursuit of our business. And so he started telling all of his competitors Can you hear me? Can you all hear me now?
Yes, we
Yes.
can hear you now.
Okay. I'm going to move to a different spot and see if this makes any difference. I don't think it will. Okay. My screen is frozen, so I can't tell if you can hear me or not.
We can hear you.
Okay. Okay. So Jay taught his competitors how to deal with me, and I decided that I would teach our competitors how to deal with people.
Just a suggestion. I wonder if maybe Dr. Smith should go off
The
of video
FMMA
and
was
just do
started
audio.
in the organization. Okay, I'll try that. Stop video. Okay. You all can still hear?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
you said good now.
Okay. So I decided to start teaching my competitors how to post prices, and the organization grew. We began to understand that it was not that difficult to distinguish between competitors and enemies, and we knew who our enemies were, and it was everyone that did not want us to do what we were doing. So the organization has grown. I would say the Arizona chapter is one of the most active chapters, if not the most active chapter, second perhaps only to the one here in Oklahoma. The chapter in San Antonio is very active, but it's good to see actually some competition amongst the state chapters for whose organization is the most vibrant. It's very exciting to see. So I think when you guys asked me to talk, I thought what I would do is discuss physician entrepreneurialism, and not just entrepreneurialism amongst physicians, but people who run facilities, and how to think differently about our role. One of my partners, Chris Paskowski, has said many times that he finds it difficult to claim to be a financial advocate for a patient when he has taken an active role in bankrupting this same patient. And if we can take control of the patient's entire experience, including their financial experience, then we have more control, not only just over the quality of care that they receive and the manner, sorry, that's my dog, in the manner in which it's received by the patient, but also to make sure they're not bankrupted. I think that after hearing your introduction, we ought to have some hats made for our annual meeting and make healthcare valuable again. And maybe those would sell. So the key to value is to understand value. I've actually planned to do a whole series of videos on understanding truly what value means, because that word has been stolen by some people that would like to misuse it, and it's not an easy concept. It's not a mathematical concept, I think, like most economists would have us believe. It's a very subjective and personal thing. That the government is using the word value is very creepy. They don't have any clue. They don't have any clue or any interest in. So as we run and operate our practices and facilities, I think it's very important to understand value in our role, and I think our mission and obligation to providing what is true value. And true value is to understand what it is that the buyer wants. The consumer ultimately determines what is valuable to them, and then they match that with whatever price that we decide to send out as a signal into the marketplace. So this concept is taking hold, and this whole idea is actually infecting some of the minds of people that I would call traditional price gougers in the United States. In Oklahoma, I'm actually working with hospitals now who worked very, very hard to put the Surgery Center of Oklahoma out of business in its early days. We've kind of decided to let bygones be bygones because they provide services at their hospital to self-funded clients of ours that we cannot provide at our outpatient center. So I'm actually teaching very wide-eyed administrators how to present value to the buyer. And this movement is growing. And I think that what you'll see in your area and in other areas all over the country is the inevitability of the power of these ideas taking over the marketplace. I remain an optimist. Jay Kempton and I have argued for years. He's on the other side in his third-party administrator role, and I would think that he has vacillated between optimism and pessimism. We sort of unofficially bet what COVID would do to the self-funded marketplace, and I think if Jay were on this call, he would admit that I won the bet as the optimist. The hospitals, price gougers have really shown their hand. The insurance companies have made a lot of money. The government is shown to be as an inept, evil, and incompetent as we all know that it is, maybe worse than any of us ever thought it could be. And more employers are awake. At the FMMA annual conference, our theme is, are you ready to be red pilled? And that is that's a dart that we're throwing at employers that have really drunk the Kool-Aid. David Contorno talks about this a lot, about drinking the Kool-Aid. Dave Chase has mentioned this too, but a lot of self-funded employers are still under the spell of their evil consultant and broker who's taken them down the wrong path. And I think Jay would agree with me that the last 18 months has served in its own way as a red pill for many self-funded employers. And we'll begin to see them not just interested, but in demanding the people from whom they buy, show them their prices, and demonstrate that in all likelihood, this exchange is going to be a valuable and mutually beneficial one. So at our, I think you all know our meeting is in Plano. Our annual meeting is in Plano in August. Steve Forbes is going to keynote this year. The last time we met in person was 2 years ago, and Ron Paul was our keynote there. Steve Forbes is such a huge fan of what is going on at the Free Market Medical Association that he's agreed to waive his normal speaking fee, which I'm here to tell you is substantial. So this is a big boost to the movement. I was on basically a video podcast sort of television show yesterday in Dallas that that will go out to hundreds and hundreds of CEOs that run self-funded companies in the Dallas area. And that I think this meeting, it promises to be perhaps our biggest one. I don't know if everybody on this call is kind of pent up and ready to get out and socialize and network with other like-minded folks. I think most people are. I think that's going to work to our advantage. And it's important for everyone to know that these ideas are making their way in a real powerful way all over the country. When I put our prices online in 2009, which seems like an eternity ago now, when I put those prices out there, I had a tinfoil hat placed on me. I was alone. It was very strange. It was weird. We were ignored or denigrated. And now, fast forward 2020, 2019, there's actually a federal law that supposedly will punish hospitals for not posting their prices or providing information up front to patients about what they're going to owe. I'm always scared when the government gets involved. I'm from the government and I'm here to help you is always a very creepy thing to hear. But the truth is this federal law has changed the narrative. And so now those of us that are honest, non-price gougers no longer appear to be the weirdos. Patients and I think increasingly self-funded employers are going to demand that people do business more in a more transparent way, in a way that's more consistent with the pillars of the Free Market Medical Association. So I want everyone on the call to have confidence that this movement is going exactly the direction that it needs to. These ideas are powerful. There are huge price gougers that are rolling to these ideas. They know that it's inevitable. A friend of mine who was in really the private sector is now the CFO of a gigantic hospital system, and he's told me recently that all of the hospitals, even at the upper echelons of the American Hospital Association, know that doing business in an honest way is inevitable. Their only uncertainty is about when this game is going to end for them. So we need to stay strong and continue to battle, continue to do all we can to show that these approaches work. Anyone that wants help figuring out how do I implement a price transparent program as an individual physician, as a facility, will find resources in this organization, me included, that will help you. One of the exciting things that has happened recently, I'd like to tell everybody, if you're not aware, I run a clearinghouse that basically collects all of the money people pay the Surgery Center of Oklahoma, so that patients or self-funded employers don't have to write multiple checks. They write one check to Atlas Billing Company, and then Atlas, this clearinghouse, pays surgeon, anesthesia facility, radiology, pathology, DME, physical therapy, whoever was involved. We've had requests from employers who have employees in multiple states, Arizona included, to use and implement this Atlas clearinghouse mechanism at other facilities that are not yet up to speed on how to implement a price transparent methodology. As I realized the number of facilities that are actually allowing this clearinghouse to help them enter this movement. When people say, well, how big is this movement? It's incredibly big. If you take into account the people who are operating under the Free Market Medical Association pillars part-time and cloaked in secrecy because of fear of losing business. So when I've been asked, when are we going to franchise? When is Surgery Center of Oklahoma going to have a facility in Iowa or Minnesota? Because of this methodology and this clearinghouse, we already kind of do. Any facility that wants to take Atlas Billing as the training wheels to get started is welcome. That they're welcome to use it, whether it's a hospital, a surgery center, a physician's office, and we've seen just that. Atlas can help someone get started, and then in an ad hoc fashion, just walk away, and then the facility can control all of the invoicing, billing, collections, coding, all that stuff. So there's some innovative things that are going on. Atlas is one. There are people that are marketing pricing in very innovative ways. I think Sesame Health, run by David Goldhill, is worth keeping your eye on. I understand David Goldhill plans on making an appearance at the Free Market Medical Association, and will be signing his book there. And he's a very interesting guy. But there are many innovators out there that are helping to spread the news and show pricing, make pricing available to patients as individuals. There are folks who have podcasts that are strictly dedicated to target self-funded employers. And that's an interesting and very powerful new development. So that's kind of a little bit of background of the organization, why I think it's so powerful, maybe why I think it's more powerful than anybody on this call might realize. And our moment has come, our time is here. And we have an exciting meeting coming up with a powerhouse keynote speaker. And you guys are part of an organization that is all and more that Jay Kempton and I ever thought it could be. So I'll stop there, and if anybody has questions, I'm happy to take them.
Keith, my first question for you is, as providers start to look towards offering these types of prices in a market where not much transparency is happening right now, are there going to be advantages to early comers, to those who offer prices early as opposed to join the game later?
Yes, I think so. But those advantages will dwindle. The folks that come to the game early probably will be favored by those who buy from them because they'll see them as less stained by price gouging than the ones who came on early. I think those advantages will dwindle, though. I think that over time, the buyers will just be happy that they have a lot of choices and will distinguish less and less between who came on early and who for that buyer represents value, whether it's extreme quality or great pricing or some combination of the two. So quality and value ultimately will dictate the advantages that any seller in the marketplace has, as they should, I would argue.
And again, anybody who wants to ask a question can leave it in the comments. Of course, anybody in this room, if you have a question, you might want to come up where he can hear you a little more clearly.
Oh, they can hear me anywhere. Dr. Smith, this is such a great mission, and you have done such a great job in bringing the hospitals over your side of Oklahoma. So here we are in Phoenix, and we have a couple of systems. And, one of them, I think we can all just come throw out the main banner because they suck. And, I think we would probably choose to go after a couple other systems, maybe Dignity or somebody to try and get them to sway over. What is the best way to begin that push?
The best way to begin what push exactly? You broke up.
The push to have the hospitals cooperate. We have, it's a small movement here in Arizona right now. We have direct primary care. We have some surgery centers that are lower cost, but they're not posting their prices. But we want to, if we get the first domino to fall, then how do you take that back into the hospital system and have them kind of jump on board? What is the message to them for value?
Well, this is a movement that continues to grow and evolve. And what I have found as the best way to make the shoe fall really is for an opportunity to present itself where a patient has been given the opportunity to redirect away from a hospital to a non-price gouger. And that is the moment to strike. That's the moment, rather than to accept that referral, someone needs to reach out to that facility and let them know, if you'll step into this game, that is not a referral lost. It's a new venture. It's a new way for you to do business and not lose patients. So I know my first reaction whenever hospitals started losing business to me was to high five everybody and make fun of them because they tortured us for so long. And I think I got over that at some point, and I realized, this movement needs to grow, and it'll grow better if there are full service hospitals on board. And sure, I mean, they don't regret their past evil ways. And if they come into this, we all need to be honest and recognize they will do it as opportunists. They'll do it to preserve revenue. I don't think the revenue model is going to go away anytime soon. But how interesting is that it's actually a revenue opportunity for hospitals to be in this game. So I think that's how it has to be presented to them. And that's where I've had luck talking to hospitals. So, I really don't want to steal this patient from you or the surgeon that's at your hospital. I know the surgeon, he's good. And your facility really provides great care. Why don't you give some thought to doing what you need to do to not lose this referral? And so, those opportunities come along and they have to be seized. I think for one of us to approach a hospital, and I've done this without that kind of leverage of perhaps a potentially lost referral, they don't care. They're not going to listen. They are making money. And they're making a lot of money, and that's what they're all about. But if they stand to lose money, you have their attention. So that's the opportunity, I think, that has to be seized.
Hi, Dr. Smith. This is Doug Vang at Ortho Arizona. Nice to hear and see you again. The question I would like to pose is quality. Everybody, all of us talk a lot about it. The question is, one, does it matter really? And the follow-up is, how do you suggest quality is presented or factored into the equation?
I tend to quote Marty McCary on quality and the work that he did in his book, Unaccountable. Marty is a smart guy. He's a true scientist. And he went into that book with the idea that he was going to be able to objectify quality. And he walked away from it, throwing up his hands, basically saying, if you want to know if having surgery at a particular facility by a particular surgeon is a good idea, then do a survey of the staff who work there and ask them, would they have Dr. X do a particular procedure at that particular facility? He really did. He threw up his hands. And other than accounting for deaths, unanticipated transfers, and infections, how many cases a particular surgeon has done of that type at that facility. All of those things are measurable, but you have to also keep in mind most of that stuff is self-reported, and many people will game those simple parameters. So I tend to not talk about quality too much because you can get bogged down. And when a patient comes to our facility and they have their surgery, they go back to work and they talk about it at the water cooler, and everybody else hears just in general terms, that was the best experience. I cannot imagine, I could not script a better experience than what I just had. And that's the type of, I think, quality reporting that we should more rely on rather than getting into too many specifics, all of which are gameable and self-reported. I report my infection rates online, but that doesn't mean anything to the average person. It's the rare individual that looks at our frequently asked questions site and looks at our infection rate. It's very, very unusual. Jay Kempton and I agree that this industry that has grown up and metastasized around the idea of data is not healthy. And all the folks that are digging through data, well, whatever. I mean, as John Harvey has pointed out, if you want to look at value, you have to look at price and quality. And if you don't know price, then you're sunk. You don't have any clue about whether it's a value or not. So I pour cold water on most people who come to me and ask me, show me your data. And I'm saying, well, I'll give you a tour, and you can see that we have a big, beautiful facility, and all the staff here are pleasant people with smiles on their face, and the surgeons will tell you, this is how many I've done and how many infections I've had, and you either have confidence in that or not. My friend Corey Cook, who's an ERISA lawyer, she was present when I was giving a talk when someone asked me about quality at the Surgery Center of Oklahoma, and she wouldn't let me answer. She interrupted and she said, "How do you measure quality at a hospital? Why does a PPO even care about quality? Hospitals don't care about quality. They make more money if something goes wrong. The big hospitals get rich when stuff goes wrong."
Well,
So
and let me, I'll take advantage of you here. The follow-up to that is, I'm thinking more of the broker or aggregator rather than the patient. And the hypothetical would be, there's a company in Albuquerque, so they're sitting halfway between beautiful Phoenix and downtrodden Tulsa, and that employer needs to make a decision. Do we work with Phoenix or Tulsa? And Tulsa's cheaper, and Phoenix, of course, we do the best work in the world. So we think we should get a little better price. How do you navigate some of that? We seem to be running into things along those lines.
and I think that a smart employer is going to send one person to Tulsa and another person to Phoenix. Tulsa, by the way, is a 2-hospital town and works very much like a cartel. There is no competitive pressure there to perform in any quality manner. They're going to receive the referrals, whether they're any good or not. I know Phoenix, the competition there is brutal, and it is in like Dallas. I mean, and what's weird in Dallas is the competition is brutal, but so are the prices. In Tulsa, the competition is brutal, and so are the prices. A lot of patients we see come from Tulsa. So if you lose a referral to Tulsa, and along the way, you gain one from the folks in Albuquerque, the people will talk and they'll say, well, yeah, I don't think if I had it to do over again after talking to you, I'd go back to, Tulsa or wherever they go. So I know you run an incredible organization, and I wouldn't have any fear at all of competing with another facility somewhere else, even mine. You shouldn't have any fear, and you shouldn't be terribly concerned that your prices are different from mine. I think employers are not as interested in the pennies. I think they're interested in good outcomes. What they don't want is a spec claim. That what they don't want is a complication. So I think they're willing to pony up if they know it's going to go well, and if they're working with somebody they have confidence in. And part of that is, you're just meeting with them and having a conversation like this. We may be, a little more expensive, but frankly, I don't think anybody can touch our quality. And when you're confident like that's really what they're interested in. Keep in mind too, the economists always deal with the question, compared to what? That's the question an economist is supposed to answer, is compared to what? And so the price at your place, Doug, is not the price so much compared to Tulsa. The price at your place is the one the employer in Albuquerque is going to compare to Merciless Hospital there in Albuquerque, which is one of the worst price gougers in the nation. So they're going to save a ton of money whether they send someone to Tulsa or to your place in Phoenix. They just want to know the patient's going to be happy and be willing to travel.
Keith, we've heard this quite a few times about the question about whether or not this is a race to the bottom for pricing. And can you speak to what evidence we have that posting pricing does not necessarily create a race to the lowest price?
Yeah, I would encourage everyone on the call to buy a copy of Henry Hazlitt's book called Economics in One Lesson. There really is no such thing as race to the bottom. That phrase doesn't even make sense. What there is a race to what is called a market clearing price. So if prices are too high, then you tend to have surpluses. If prices are too low, then you tend to have shortages. When the price is right at any given moment, keeping in mind prices are dynamic and do and should change. But when the price is right at any given moment, the market is cleared. In other words, there are no shortages or surpluses if the pricing overall in a market is ideal. So what we have is a race to a market clearing price. If I have to lower my prices because some vicious competitor has undercut me below my cost and I can't compete for that business, I will just stop doing that particular surgery because I can't compete. That's why we don't do colonoscopies or EGDs at Surgery Center of Oklahoma, because there are 2 GI labs in my area that do it at a high volume, at an incredibly high quality for a price I can't touch. And so I just don't do that. It'd be silly for me to do that. So race to the bottom. I mean, if you're charging $12,000 for a procedure that I charge $6,000 for, then you're going to race pretty hard towards 6,000, or you're going to lose a fair amount of business to me. But that's not a race to the bottom. That's a race to what economists call a market clearing price. And that's a very important concept, I think, for anybody in this movement to understand.
We've got a question from Darren who asks, what is the main argument against free market principles in healthcare?
The primary argument from the economists and intellectuals would be that free markets do not apply to this industry for a couple of reasons. One is the information differential. That's one of the arguments that that economists have made in the past, is that the seller, the physician, let's say, has so much more information than the buyer, that the buyer cannot intelligently choose. I would argue, and you can watch Peter Klein from the Mises Institute make this case better than I ever could, but I would argue that that's the situation in many buyer-seller situations. I mean, I don't know much about cars at all. So when I go to buy a car, I'm at a terrible disadvantage for the person selling it to me, or electronics for that matter. So there are a lot of situations where the buyer is reliant on the seller not being a fraud. So that's one argument, is the information differential. If a physician says, you need your gallbladder taken out, or you need your shoulder reconstructed, you're sort of at their mercy about whether or not that's true. There's some things to not be ignored, though. I mean, the primary care docs are the guide in this morass, and the primary care docs, Kendrick, as you know, they know who the unscrupulous surgeons are, and you don't refer to them. So over time, these things tend to work out. There may be a bump here or there. I mean, there's an orthopedic surgeon here in Oklahoma City who has an arrangement with an implant manufacturer, and every shoulder he does an arthroscopy on, he cuts the bicep tendon and reattaches it, and he makes money for adding that onto the procedure, and he gets a kickback from the implant manufacturer. And he has said many times, I never let a biceps tendon get in my way. And that word is getting around, and he is beginning to lose business because he's an unscrupulous mercenary. So these things sort of have a way of working themselves out. Even though he's harmed some people, they have a way of working themselves out over time. The other argument is made by those who understand or have I would say a slim understanding of Austrian economics, where they talk about order of preferences. And what is your preference if you're in a desert and you're dying of thirst? Do you want a glass of water, or what do you want? A diamond? Well, you want a glass of water. I mean, your life depends on it. And so the whole idea is, well, how do you place medical services in your order of preferences? Because if your health is not maintained, then all your other preferences are subsidiary. They don't matter. The fact of the matter is, it all boils down, for me, philosophically, on property rights. I own my body, I own my time, I own my property. There is no pre-existing obligation for me to give my property to others just because I was born. So these arguments against the free market hinge on those two major things. Philosophically, if you believe in property rights, that what's yours is yours and your rights stop where my nose begins, that sort of thinking. And if you understand there are informational disadvantages between buyers and sellers in multiple industries, those are the two main places where people would object philosophically to applying free market to the industry.
Darren, do you have a follow-up to that?
No, I think that was, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
And then Diana says, how do we talk to patients about this?
Patients are hungry for this. It's actually very easy. The only thing I would say in the beginning that I dealt with was disbelief. In medical school, I was trained to never have a conversation with a patient about money. It's easy for me because I run the facility. So I'm not just talking about my own physician component. I'm also talking about the facility component, which is usually what bankrupts the patient. Patients are actually very happy that someone will actually straight up talk to them about this. And if it seems uncomfortable to talk to a patient about money, then maybe your price is too high. I mean, that's something to think about. If it's embarrassing to look a patient in the eye and say, this is what I charge for what I, oh, sorry, that's my dog again. If it's embarrassing to say, this is what I charge for what I do, then, we've got to look in the mirror. But I think if we declare our worth in the marketplace, do it proudly and confidently, my experience has been patients are grateful. The most grateful patients I've ever encountered.
Can you still hear us, Keith?
Look a patient in the eye. Yeah, I mean, it's real easy for me to, look a patient in the eye and say, we charge $3,740 for a knee arthroscopy, and that pays for everything. And they find that delightful. And I always ask them, how did you find us? Did you shop around? What was your next best price? That's always a great question to ask, because if they've shopped around, then what you're going to hear from them with regard to their next best price is astonishing. It's shocking. And you're their pal, you're their buddy, you're trying to help them through this financially and medically.
And then David Loreno says, would it be beneficial for docs to do a hybrid model, fee for service, transparent pricing in our clinic so we don't lose patients?
Yeah, I think that is a very good idea, particularly for someone who is just getting into this. Once you become transparent, though, if you have enough volume to be satisfied with your income, it's kind of hard to go back. It's kind of gross to go back. I think that's a great approach for someone wanting to get into this and put their toe in the water. If, that's another thing Atlas Billing has done, has allowed hybrid approaches. If someone is afraid that the PPO network with whom they're contracted is going to get onto them for posting prices, then, Atlas Billing or Free Market Medical Association Shop Health will post prices for you as a proxy. And so, Lee Gross, our DPC friend and founder of Epiphany Health, he still maintains a hybrid practice. He accepts insurance sort of in one silo, and he's DPC in another silo. So he doesn't have the purist model that you see like Josh Umber at Atlas MD. So, there are a lot of ways to do this. There's no judgment from anybody in this movement on how someone gets involved, stays involved, runs their practice, whether it's a totally pure practice like mine, where I'm, I don't accept any insurance. We have never taken a dime of money from the government. That is radical, and we know that. but you don't have to do that to satisfy the pillars of Free Market Medical Association. And frankly, for someone to start out that way, I think I'd characterize as reckless.
You calling me reckless, Keith?
You are reckless. I'm not saying I don't admire reckless, but it is.
Oh, reckless. Yeah. So an earlier question, and I think what we've heard before is how do we establish a pricing strategy?
Well, you sharpen your pencil and you first of all start with the concept of what is my time worth? I know I've listened to Josh Umber and Lee Gross, and they started with, okay, how much do I think I need to make a year? Well, how much is that a month? Okay. Well, how many patients at what rate do I need to subscribe to my primary care service in order to get there? And so it's really simple stuff like that. If you're a physician, if you're a surgeon, a proceduralist, you really have to come to grips with the idea of what is my time worth. And there are some tweaks to that to account for expertise. But ultimately, we have 115 surgeons now in our facility, and they have all come to grips with the idea that it's time and materials, and they have a pretty good idea now of what their time is worth. They know how long it's going to take them to do a case, with the rarest exception, and so they have a clue about what is their time worth. And they also have to factor in, well, how much time did I have to spend with this patient preoperatively? How much time will I spend with them postoperatively for uncomplicated follow-up? All of those hours have to be added up, honestly added up and accounted for before you can really look at what actually is my time worth. Because all of that, I would argue, all of that time should be included in the bundle price. On the facility side, it's really pretty easy. You start out, what does it cost to run a facility a year, a month, a week, a day? How many ORs are running? How much does it cost to run a facility for an hour? And you can get pretty close. You can get into a range where you kind of know. And so pick a price. And if you're wrong, when you look back, you sharpen your pencil and you look back and you think, man, I missed it on this one, then change your price. There's nothing is set in stone. So, people get started and they put what they think is an appropriate margin on their service and their facility and their time and materials. And if you're wrong, you adjust it. That's how every other business does this.
Now, I recently had a patient who needed a skin surgery, a skin cancer surgery, and they were scheduled for a procedure at a Banner facility, and it was estimated to start at somewhere around $30,000. And we contacted a couple of surgeons here in town and found one who could tell me exactly what the surgery center fees and the anesthesia fees and the pathology fees would be. And then he quoted a surgery price for somewhere around 3 or 4 times what I think any other payer would pay him. So he made something like $5,000 off of the surgery that Medicare would only pay a few $100s for it. But he was able to lower the overall cost of the surgery by nearly $20,000. So I wonder what you would say to somebody who is clearly making an extra profit off of doing this transparent pricing while still lowering the total cost of care. So what's your feeling about doing something like that?
Well, you've just described the model, Surgery Center of Oklahoma. We really have pared down the margin of profitability on our facility. We almost operate as a not-for-profit for the institution, but we've taken part of what would have gone toward the institutional profit and padded the surgeon's fee. So we pay the surgeons more than they make anywhere else from any payer. And we do that on purpose. We do that so that when I call the best surgeon in the city and I tell him I have a patient for him, he tells all the Aetna folks to step aside. Here comes a Surgery Center of Oklahoma referral. It's his favorite business. It's her favorite business. They love it. The patients feel that. And we pay the surgeons multiples, many times, what the carriers pay them. The overall price, though, is a fraction of what the patient would have endured at one of the Darth Vader price gouger hospitals. So I think that is a beautiful model, and partly because it's mine.
So you don't feel bad about a surgeon getting paid more to do this kind of work?
Well, it's the market. Keep in mind, it's compared to what? Now, if compared to what the patient was going to pay at Banner, is a hell of a deal. Compared to Medicare, never compare to Medicare. Medicare is illegitimate. Medicare hospitals, I think, are comfortable comparing their prices to Medicare. Physicians never should be. I've told you all the last open heart surgery for which I gave an anesthetic was 6 hours in 1992, and Medicare paid me $285. So would it be okay for me to have made $2,000 on that case? I don't know. Depends on who you ask. If you're asking me at the time, putting in a balloon pump and me managing, my Swan Ganz catheter, I'd say, yeah, 2,000 is not stupid. So, everything's compared to what, should that guy have made a big fee because he was instrumental in saving that patient 20,000? I think you could make that case. So I don't begrudge a surgeon for being paid handsomely for what they do. And in fact, I find the opposite is usually true. Surgeons undervalue their service. They don't put a high enough price on it. When I asked my ear, nose, and throat surgeons when we first got started with this, how much do you want for a tonsillectomy? I was astonished at how low the numbers that rolled in were. And I gave them multiples of that. I mean, tonsillectomy it's really simple or it's not. And sometimes they're not. And so it just didn't make sense to pay them $300, which is what Blue Cross pays them in this area for tonsillectomy. That just seems stupid to me. So no, I don't begrudge the surgeon that at all.
And I think it comes back to the question of value. That surgeon did provide an enormous amount of value for us. And the value was not just in his surgical technique or the amount of hours that he spent actually performing surgery. He created an opportunity that we didn't have in another place. And it sounds like you're okay with him getting paid for that.
Yeah, but also keep in mind, he is in a competitive market, whether he likes it or not. And the guy across the street from him hears this story and says, hell, I'll do that for 3,000. And now it's game on. And it's not a race to the bottom. I mean, it's a race to a market clearing price where both of those surgeons still want the business down to a point. But competition will do that. So the guy's charging 5,000. He may get away with that for a little while. And he may be someone who is able to get away with that for a long time. And that means that is the market for his service. And he should be in control of what he charges. And if he can get it, he gets it. in a free market, there's nothing unethical about that. However, if you're greedy and you're hitting people pretty hard, you have to understand that's unstable. And there's somebody that's going to come in, a new kid on the block, and they may be just as good, they may be better, and they may charge less, and then you've got a problem.
And I would just add from Ortho Arizona's limited experience to date, how we've wrestled with coming to grips with that ethically. And I know everybody's going to snicker about orthopedists, but how we've come to grips with that is in the scheme of things, the surgeon professional fee is minuscule compared to a hospital facility fee and the implant fee. Anesthesia would be obviously a lot closer to the surgeon fee, and just moving it from a hospital to and even a hospital outpatient department to an ASC. I just saw our numbers from earlier for April and March, and just over year, the volumes that are moving out of the hospitals, the huge savings. Unfortunately, we don't get the 5X. We've had some where the surgeon pro fee is up maybe 50%, and it's still minuscule for that. The value creation here is enormous.
So we also have a question about referral, patients getting referred to you when you're not in a network. How does that work in the free market when so much of primary care is currently controlled by insurance-based primary care?
Well, we get, I think I'm answering your question, and I'll make it quick in case I'm not. But our business is partially made up of patients who have insurance, even though we are out of network with everyone. But the price we have listed online many times is less than their deductible, certainly less than their deductible and copay at one of the strip mining price gougers. So a good part of our business are patients who actually have insurance but choose to pay us up front because it's financially better for them. We will file their insurance for them as a courtesy, but not accept benefit assignment. And that way, if the insurance company decides to issue a check for some reason, it goes directly to the patient. If it mistakenly comes to us, we just send it to the patient. So being in an out of network position can, if you're honest and you just charge people, your regular cash pay, self-pay website price, I would say 20%, 25% of our business on any given month can be characterized in that way. And in that sense, Obamacare is one of the best things that ever happened to us because they jacked deductibles up and there were a ton of people who could come see us for whom it made sense.
And how do people find you?
Well, they find us online, find us on social media. Those are individual buyers. The cost sharing ministries we're connected with, they're promoting us directly to their membership. And then the self-funded employers, they find us constantly, whether it's, some media thing or some, news story or a pissed off CFO who does a web search because he's tired and thinks his broker's lying to him. There's a lot of information out there, and FMMA is more widely known in the self-funded community than I think most people understand, and that's just continuing to balloon. But individuals find us when they do their Google search, and I pay some money to make sure Surgery Center of Oklahoma actually pops up when someone searches, cash surgery, price transparent medical care. There are all these kind of code words that, you have to basically pay for, and then people search and they find us, and we usually pop up near the top when people do that.
And are you seeing a shift in referrals coming from primary care?
Yes, I would say the direct primary care folks in the United States are more aware of the surgical options that they have. We're seeing more referrals from DPC docs, and we're also seeing referrals from more DPC docs that are not in our region. So we have direct primary care referrals coming from all over the country now, and that's fairly new. I hadn't really thought about that, but that's really pretty new. I would say 40% of our referrals now come from out of state, whether it's individuals or from self-funded companies. Probably in some weeks it's 50% of our patients come from out of state.
Well, we've sent a couple of those to you too, just because, we might make 50 phone calls before being able to find a place to get a surgery here in town.
Yeah, and Atlas Billing is going to try to help with that. I think there are some options in your area, and it's, you get one hospital to fold, you get one hospital to cooperate, and then everything starts to get easier. And those opportunities are out there, and I look forward to working together with you, Kendrick, and everybody else on the call to kind of bring these ideas, whether Central Arizona wants it or not.
Good. Do you have any other questions before we get ready to wrap this up?
Hey, this is Dave Kaplan. I was in Dallas with Camp Moss Group. I'm one of the agents, and you spoke at our convention, and you were talking about working with the hospital. I think it was Arrowhead. So we were asking, are you looking at bringing a center here to Phoenix? So what's your progress on that? I know it's going kind of slow.
Your question is about our working with Arrowhead Hospital?
Yeah, or anything here in Phoenix. But I think you mentioned Arrowhead is what you were working on.
Yes, Arrowhead was very difficult to work with. We actually worked with them and got a case done there. I'll have to rack my brain and think what it was. It was something simple. It was an umbilical hernia or something, and the pricing they gave us was obscene. But it was probably better than the self-funded employer would have found on their own. But I was very unsatisfied. If you guys are not familiar with Dr. Jeffrey Singer, who's a general surgeon in Phoenix, you should familiarize yourself with him. He's a fellow at the Cato Institute and just one of the most intelligent people I've ever known. But he's a general surgeon, and I'm going to start working with Jeff to see if he can help me identify facilities in the area where general surgery can be performed at a reasonable price in your area other than Arrowhead. And Jeff's just the kind of guy it's very difficult to say no to. And if you ever meet him, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Okay, so still kind of slow progress getting the way it sounds.
Yeah, it's slow. I have a sort of strategy, but it's unfolding. But I don't think Arrowhead is going to be where we land.
Someplace else then.
Yeah.
I think.
Uh-huh.
Hey, Keith, I have a question. This is Nathan Moore. I'm an orthopedic surgeon, more or less independent, but affiliated with a surgery center group here in town, Phoenix Spine and Joint. We've got a lot of travelers that kind of come, whether they're cash or bundles from other employers. Do you team up with some local lodging situations or people that kind of help in this traveler situation when people are coming from out of state, or how have you navigated that for these travelers?
Yes, there is an outfit called Host Care Resources, the principal of which is named Shauna Thomas. And I will email Tim or Kendrick with her copied because she would love to know that I mentioned her on this call. But Host Care Resources right now is the only concierge travel sort of hand holder in the United States that I know of. There used to be a company called New World Medical Tourism, but I don't think they're in business anymore. There are several companies that do that in Canada. Rick Baker, Timely Medical Alternatives in Vancouver, and then Health Ventis, Vantis, is on the other side of Canada. They're kind of the underground railroad for Canadians, and they kind of help them find care in the United States and do the concierge travel. Canada's sort of dead in water right now because Canada will let Canadians come to the United States. They just won't let them come back without great difficulty. So our Canadian business is kind of dried up. But I do work with Host Care Resources, and I can recommend them without reservation, and will email introduce Kendrick and Tim to Shauna so that she knows you guys are on the map and wanting to work with her. She's very nice. She's great to work with.
Well, Keith, we really appreciate your time tonight, and thank you to everybody who is on the call here. And Tim has a request here to end the meeting, a call to action, if you will.
Doesn't like put me on the spot. As Dr. Smith has said, we may look at this and say there's not very many people here. There's not very many people online, but what he's saying is there's a lot of people involved. And in order for us to, I guess, solidify that, we need to take some steps. And one of those steps is for our providers and for people who are active to join the FMMA. Just get your name out there, take a stand. It's a few $100 for a year, but we want to know who is ready to take that first step of a commitment, and then we want to work with those individuals to help get a surgical center going. We know that working with direct primary care and others, that we have patients that we're referring all the time right now. And I know there's just several people that have put on the chat and say, they would like those referrals. We need to know who you are, and in order to do that, we need you to sign up. And we put a goal at the beginning of the year to have 50 providers in the facility by the end of the year. And we're coming into the summer months. Not quite sure what our number is, but we know through working with the companies that we're working with that we're sending patients somewhere. We would like to know who those providers are that want to take part in this. And I want to just thank Dr. Smith for, again, just bringing the elevation of this movement, not just Arizona, but really to across the country. And for those of us who are passionate in healthcare, this is the way forward. And, I couldn't be more excited to do that. And, I heard from a couple of folks before we started the meeting, Dr. Smith, and they're in the medical community by family, but were encouraged not to go into medicine because of the economic climates that, you know, the medical world was headed towards. And to me, that's kind of sad when we have talented individuals that would not choose this profession to help people because of the economic thing. Because as you said to open it, there's $1 trillion to be reallocated. And I think it's time for the providers to step up and take theirs.
Well, thanks, thanks, Tim. I appreciate your kind words, and I'm hoping that everybody on this call can make it to Plano, Texas. The annual meeting, as I said, promises to be truly remarkable with the speakers that we have lined up. I'm very, very excited to see everyone in person finally.
What are the dates in August?
It's August 5th through 7th. August 5 through 7.
Do you have a block of rooms and a room ready at the Hilton?
Yes.
What's the group code?
I'm not sure. Kelly Kempton does all that, and James Donovan. I think all of that stuff is probably on the website.
Okay, it wasn't on the email invite. Not for this one. No, for that, there was not. For this, I didn't see on the email. I'll check. No problem. Yeah, I mean, let's, is everyone here registered with the Arizona chapter on our Google? You guys are? Okay. Send us your contact information, and then I'll get the information for the national meeting out to everybody who signed. Okay?
Sounds good.
Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in tonight. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody.